A moment later, the consultant expresses his grief over the king's death at the hands of the first prince and asks what they should do next. The prince reveals that everything about the situation seems too suspicious to believe, and he will decide after monitoring his two sisters' movements. He admits he doesn't know much about the fifth princess's motives, but he's sure she's not the type to take risks, so he wants to follow her lead. He's also certain that the capital will likely descend into chaos with this power shift, and their priority should be to safeguard their families. With that in mind, he tells his consultant to instruct the chief knight and all castle staff to write letters home. The prince wants to ensure that everyone's families are escorted to other towns to hide. The consultant expresses his gratitude for the prince's careful consideration. The prince also tells his consultant that he wants to stop exporting the town's metals and will only sell gems and rocks to Willowtown, as he wants to use the metals for himself to make more machinery. Additionally, he plans to incorporate more civilians into the army and train them accordingly. He feels smug as he considers the news that the ambassador brought a blessing in disguise. Roland is confident that as long as he hunkers down in Bordertown, someone will try to bite him, such as Duke Ryan from the Longsong Fortress. Once the months of demons pass, he is pretty sure that Duke Ryan will try to extend his influence across the western side of the kingdom under the new administration, and this is precisely what Roland wants. Industrialization is his priority, but what he lacks most is people. Bordertown's population is only around 2,000, limiting the expansion of his projects due to a labor shortage. Buying slaves, recruiting talented individuals, or increasing the birth rate seem unrealistic. On the other hand, if they can take Longsong Stronghold, he can gain a large number of freed people while accumulating wealth. Assimilation is easier, and invasion is the best way to grow the population and gather wealth. Roland acknowledges the hassle of challenging the entire fort of Longsong, and he can only wait for Nightingale to return with the witches. This is also the sole reason the prince wants to expand his civilian army and wants to make more machinery. The next scene takes us to the northern mountain range, where Nightingale proceeds down one of the tunnels. Her steps are soon halted by roots growing out and blocking the entrance. Nightingale immediately introduces herself, and the lady known as Leaf withdraws her roots and gets delighted to see her friend back. After exchanging pleasantries, Leaf reveals that one of the two witches, Erin or Ashley, failed to make it to maturity. They then decide not to dwell on gloomy things and proceed to get inside. Nightingale is looking forward to seeing her friend Wendy, and as soon as Wendy is called over by her friend, she spins around and greets Nightingale warmly, playfully calling her Veronica. Wendy takes Nightingale's hand in hers, causing Nightingale to blush and assert that she's not the same weak girl as before, preferring not to go by Veronica anymore. Wendy insists she shouldn't deny her past because it's a part of her. Nevertheless, Nightingale is glad to see her friend, and they embrace each other tightly. Wendy then inquires about Anna and whether Nightingale managed to help her through her maturity. With a smile, Nightingale reveals that Anna didn't need any saving at all. In fact, what they've discovered is going to change things for all the witches. In a few moments, Nightingale spills the beans to her sisters about the prince and how he's letting everyone stay in his border town without any discrimination against witches. Wendy's not buying it at first, but Nightingale swears up and down that the prince not only said it, but also saved Anna and Nana. Not only that, the prince does not believe in any bullshit about witches being possessed by devils, and stresses that witches get their power from themselves. To seal the deal, Nightingale reminds everyone about her ability to smell lies, so they can trust her when she says the prince is serious. She spills about his plans to protect witches and even go against the church if he even has to. Then she pulls out the steam engine blueprints, proving they can build a kick-ass sanctuary to rival the Holy Mountain. Just as Nightingale's painting this picture of paradise, some lady with green hair barges in, telling everyone to shut up. She seems like their teacher, and Nightingale quickly shows respect by bowing her head. The teacher gives Nightingale the stink eye, wondering aloud if she's saying the Holy Mountain they've been chasing forever is just a bunch of hot air. Next up, we're with the new king, Timothy, where a knight shows up with a stone called Divine Judgment, supposedly the ultimate weapon against demonic forces. The knight boasts that the church has confirmed its power to handle witches for ages, but Timothy's annoyed, blaming witches for his father's suicide. He orders the knight to keep capturing witches and scour the capital thoroughly for more. Meanwhile, back with Nightingale, she wakes up tied to a pillar with that same witch suppression stone around her neck. She's trying to figure out how she ended up in this mess. We flash back to when the green-haired lady freaked out at the idea of the prince siding with witches. She rants about how witches have been persecuted and killed for ages. She believes Nightingale has been deceived by the prince and insists that the pain of maturity is a sacred test for a witch's body and mind, and only those who endure it can achieve true power and find eternal peace in the holy mountain. Nightingale is shocked to realize that all the suffering witches endured was just a test for this woman. She's further annoyed at the thought that her fallen sisters, who endured so much pain, are simply dismissed as disqualified subjects. The teacher offers Nightingale a final chance to seek forgiveness for her ignorance and mistakes, promising her mercy. But Nightingale remains resolute, insisting she'll only take sisters with her who believe in her. As she tries to leave, a snake immediately grabs her feet, and before she can react, she blacks out from the venomous injection of petrification, waking up to find herself in her current bind. While they're face to face, Nightingale reminds her why she is using the Divine Stone of Judgment even though it's prohibited in the Witch Association. The Snake Lady says it's just a tool to punish disobedient kids. She reminds Nightingale how Wendy saved her from the clutches of the aristocrats. Instead of repaying that kindness, now Nightingale is trying to sell them all out to those filthy nobles just to mend her relationships with them again. Nightingale denies any such motive, emphasizing she only wants her sisters to live freely without fear of starvation or the pains of maturity, and believes everyone deserves the right to choose their own path. She points out how much Border Town has changed, pointing out that the steam engine blueprint she brought is just one of many miracles. The Snake Lady scoffs, saying she can't make heads or tails of the blueprint and tosses it into the fire, declaring that a hunk of steel can't move like it's alive and she's no fool. She then grabs the hot dagger and holds it just inches from Nightingale's neck, letting her know this is her last chance to beg forgiveness for trying to deceive the Witch Association. If Nightingale doesn't comply, she threatens to skewer her heart and turn her into an example for others. Even though she is staring at her death, Nightingale remains defiant. Instead of bowing her head, she'd rather take that dagger straight to her heart. That's when Wendy steps in, reminding them how many sisters they've already lost and they can't afford to lose another. The Snake Woman grows agitated, demanding to know if Wendy also believes Nightingale's lies. Wendy denies it, stating she's not planning to go to the border town, but she agrees with Nightingale that everyone should have the right to choose their own path. Wendy then asks if anyone wants to bail with Nightingale to the town, but nobody speaks up. Seeing this, Wendy suggests letting Nightingale go solo since she hasn't done anything to harm the gang. The others agree, telling their teacher to set Nightingale free. But the teacher goes absolutely bonkers, saying she can't risk letting Nightingale go because she might expose their turf location to the church. She swings her dagger, ready to strike, but before she can, Wendy steps in and stops her. Wendy grabs a coin and throws it hard at Nightingale, smashing the power suppressor stone. The teacher gets ticked off and goes after Wendy with a snake that bites her hand, but Nightingale springs into action. Before the teacher can react, she's screaming in pain with a sword in her chest, causing her to collapse to the ground. Before anyone can react, Nightingale and her friend start to disappear and exit the tunnel. Wendy doesn't seem to be in good spirits because the poison from the snake bite is spreading across her hand. To stop it from spreading further, Nightingale reluctantly grabs her dagger and severs Wendy's hand from her body. She keeps the hand with her, confident that Nana can heal it back soon. They've been walking forever, and it took them 3 days just to get here. Carrying Wendy is slowing them down further, and with her losing blood, Nightingale fears she won't last another 3 days. But her worries prove unnecessary when a mysterious newcomer arrives, ready to lend a helping hand. A newcomer looks like a boy at first glance, but she is actually a girl. She reassures Nightingale not to freak out. Her name is Lightning, and she recently joined the Witch Association. Nightingale stays cautious around this tomboy and asks if Kara sent her. Lightning shrugs it off, saying it's no wonder Nightingale doesn't recognize her since she's always out and about. She makes it clear she's here because, like Nightingale said earlier, everyone should live life their own way, and she's chosen to stick with Nightingale. Simple as that. She's totally pumped about all the machinery and exploding dynamite, being an explorer at heart. Nightingale wonders why someone so into adventure joined the association. Lightning explains that finding the Holy Mountain is an adventure in itself, but the association is all about books, and Kara's always buried in them. Nightingale asks if Lightning's a fighter, to which she nods, mentioning she can fly too. Or so Lightning thought. She's struggling to move an inch with all that weight over her little shoulders. Finally, she gathers enough energy and starts floating slowly through the air. The tomboy then asks if Nightingale knows Wendy for a long time, noting how Wendy called Nightingale Veronica back at base camp. Nightingale confirms they go way back and tells how, before joining the association, people treated her like a puppet. And it was Wendy who showed her way to live. She reveals she had a family in Silver City when she was 13, but her parents disappeared during a commoner uprising. Nightingale's uncle then took her and her brother, Hyde. That was also the year her witch abilities first appeared inside her, but her uncle figured out her secret right away and split her from Hyde, locking her up to train her powers. He threatened to harm Hyde unless she used her abilities for his dirty work. So she became a full-on assassin. Poisoning, ambushing, you name it. She did every kind of horrendous act. As the Gillen family's wealth increased with time, her hands got dirtier and dirtier as well, soaked in the blood of others. The worst part is that her powers were just too perfect for that kind of work. When she finally reunited with Hyde, he turned her away cold, wishing he didn't have a witch for a sister. After that, she was broken inside. When maturity hit, she managed to survive the pain, and her powers also intensified. The prison bars couldn't contain her anymore, so she broke free, killed her uncle, and left with no direction. It was then she found Wendy, who was like a spark of warmth in her cold world. Wendy took her to the association, where she met other witches, and their teacher Kara provided solace to everyone. In the present, Lightning points out that Kara has gone off the rails, finding it hard to believe there's a prince who genuinely cares about witches. After finally reaching Border Town, we find our duo inside this familiar, quaint cottage. The prince can't seem to stop sneezing, wondering who might be thinking about him so much. Just then, a commotion grabs their attention. As they turn around, they see Nightingale and the other two bursting into the cottage, crashing right before their feet. Anna immediately takes her stance to deal with these uninvited intruders. But Nightingale immediately yells at our hero to fetch Nana as quickly as possible. As Nana tends to Wendy's injuries, our hero has no clue what went down at the association that made Nightingale rush back with only 3 witches. He wonders if demons attacked them and if only 3 survived, feeling lucky they have Nana to reattach Wendy's arm. Suddenly, Lightning appears from the infirmary. The prince quickly asks if she's hurt too. Lightning reassures him and points out how the prince really is a decent guy who cares about witches, just like Nightingale said. She admits she didn't believe it at first, just like other members of the association. She then jokes about how the world is full of weirdos, so having a prince like him isn't that surprising. Being called a weirdo doesn't sit well with the prince, who just rolls his eyes. Getting to the point, the prince realizes the association wasn't under attack. That's when Lightning starts explaining the whole situation, clarifying they weren't attacked. Wendy was hurt by their own teacher, Kara, and explains further as to how they ended up here. Once night falls, Prince Roland returns to his room, only to be startled by Nightingale sweetly lying on his bed in her nightsuit. Prince Roland gets all flustered, maybe starting to think about some naughty stuff, imagining Nightingale might be up for getting close after all. Suddenly, Nightingale gets up and strides over to him, leaving him scared out of his wits and pinned against the closed door. He hastily tells her she should rest as long as she needs. But then, Nightingale kneels before the prince. In a serious moment, she, Veronica Gillen, officially swears her loyalty to him. She promises to follow his orders and stand by his side in battle, facing demons or anything else, until her last breath. It's no surprise to our hero that after being let down by the association, Nightingale is turning to him for help with the future of witches. Without missing a beat, he takes the sword from her hands and officially makes her his right-hand woman. The prince asks if her real name is Veronica, and she nods, saying there's no reason to hide it from him now. Next, we catch up with Wendy, who's been offered a contract. Our hero tells her to stay in the border town and work for him. If she's up for it, she can sign on the dotted line, promising good pay for her work. He also spills the beans on a method he's found where witches can sail through their maturity without feeling any pain at all. The news totally throws off the new witches,